Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hello from wherever you're joining us
शाम को
today.
क्या है शाम को जल्दी बना ले पकौड़े बिकौड़े और भगवान जी का भी ये कर दूं क्या करूं।
Good morning. So, welcome to today's webinar, which is our second webinar for the AIDT SIG. And today we have a special guest with us who is Nick Peachey. And today it's going to be an exceptional session as always. So, please type in the chat where you're from, where you're based, and what are your expectations from today's webinar? And let's check. So, good afternoon. Mr. Mohammed joining us from Oman. We have Chris from Barcelona, from Spain. And I can add an extra question is like, how is the weather there? Where are you based? Welcome, everybody. Oh, Chris says it's like 30 degrees Celsius. Okay, great. Good morning, Emini from Egypt. Good morning, Finita from Indonesia. Good morning. Hello, Hind from Saudi Arabia. Mr. Mohammed from Oman. All right, so without further ado, so I will hand over the meeting to my friend Aram, who will introduce our guest for today. And please tune in till the end of the webinar for in order to receive your certificate. So there will be a link to a survey. After filling the survey, you will receive your certificate of attendance for today's webinar within 5 business days from today's date. Thank you so much, and over to you, Aram.
Thank you so much, Yusra, and thank you everybody for showing up today. For those that don't know Nick, allow me to introduce him to you. Well, let's start with Nick being an accomplished educator, an author, and a learning technology consultant, which is kind of the theme of our special interest group. He's known for his collaborations, his conferences, his publications, and his amazing work over the past 30 years in combining technology and learning together. So he's taught in various education settings all across the globe, which makes those 30 years even that much more valuable to us, because Nick is somebody that has really touched on the challenges that face both the educator and the student themselves. His passion for technology and innovation has really put him on, let's say, the top of the list when it comes to innovators. And it's also landed him 2 British Council Innovation Awards in his years. He continues to inspire us through his workshops, again, his presentations. And today he is here to continue on that journey and really show us how education and technology can go hand in hand together. So without further ado, if you may, Mr. Nick, the floor is all yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I hope the sound is okay and everyone's not too hot wherever they may be. It's actually quite cool here, I think, compared to sort of most places. But then, you know, I am in the UK, so we're always happy when it's not raining. Okay, this session is on AI prompting for collaborative teacher development, which is a particular interest of mine and something that I'm particularly interested in developing in terms of the way prompting AI can be used to get it to act as a mentor and someone that you can interact with and which will help you think through processes and develop your thinking and your teaching. During the presentation, I'll show you a number of prompts, give you a number of links to websites. Don't worry too much if you can't pick all those up immediately. I'll give you a link to the presentation at the end and you can go back through it all and get all the links and all the prompts from there. So, you know, you don't have to worry too much about keeping up and making notes and things like that. If it helps you to remember, by all means do, but it's not a necessity. You'll be able to get some of the other stuff at the end. I'll apologise in advance for today. I'm actually working on a really small screen, which I don't usually work on because I'm away from home and I'm visiting family, and I'm in my daughter's bedroom at the moment to do that. So I might be fiddling a bit more than usual and messing around with the screen, but I'll try and do my best to get through this properly. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, next page of the presentation. So, I've been interested in educational technology for quite a long time, since the kind of end of the last century, which makes me sound extremely old. I first got interested in it when I had my first daughter, and I was living in Barcelona at the time, and I wanted her to keep her in touch with sort of first language culture, and I thought a computer would be a good idea to do that, and was really amazed at how many opportunities there were to help her with language learning, and so that got me really hooked on educational technology. And I did a master's degree with Manchester University, and at that time it was something quite new for everyone. I mean, I'd only just bought a computer, so I didn't really know much about it, but I did the masters and really kind of learned a lot from it. More recently, I've become sort of really interested in AI, and as you can see, I've written so far. I've written about 6 books on different aspects of AI, which seems a bit excessive in a way, but each of them. The first one was ChatGPT in the language classroom, and it was the kind of when I first got interested in it, and since then I've kind of broadened out and got interested in so many kind of more specific aspects of it, and looking at those in more detail. And so today's session, I mean, my most recent one is this one on developing critical thinking skills for AI. And that came about through doing so many of these webinars where you get to the end of the webinar and say, any questions? And always one teacher will say, yeah, but what about critical thinking? What's it doing to our critical thinking? So I thought I'd better do something about that. And it started being an article, I'll just write this article and sort of lay out some ideas for critical thinking. And it turned into a book because I sort of came up with so many ideas that I thought, oh, well, that's really great. And it developed. Anyway, today's session is going to be more based on this book, and it's about, interactive prompting and teacher development. So we'll get into that a bit. Before we get into that, I thought it'd be nice to give you a question here, and I'd like to know how you've used AI in your own teaching and your own learning. So if you could scan the QR code with your phone, you'll see a little questionnaire there, and you can fill in the questionnaire and share with us how you've been using it, and then we can sort of have a look together and see how that matches up. So I'll give you a couple of minutes just to scan that QR code. Hopefully you have a phone handy. And if you haven't used AI at all, don't worry. Just kind of say, I haven't used it. It's always useful to do things like this because it gives me some idea of the amount of experience there is in the room, or the amount of variety of experience there is in the room as well. And then I can sort of adapt the talk a little bit to make sure that it's suitable. Okay, I'll see if anybody's answered yet. I said, hopefully waiting for my questionnaire to open. Is it going to open? Okay. Okay, so a few people have answered already. Some yeses, some nos, yes, but most simulating uses AI, retired before AI. Creating videos, generating photos, yeah, reviewing lesson plans, yeah. Designing personalized lessons and interactive learning apps, usually in generating exercises, yeah. So it's just going to change slides so that reboots again. It looks like most of you are who are using AI are using it in very much a kind of what I call at least a product orientated approach. So, you know, you ask it to do something for you and it produces a product, and you're like a lesson plan or some materials, and that's great. You know, that's sort of an amazing time saver for teachers and an amazing way of producing personalized materials for students. And you know, I'm not knocking that at all, but this webinar will be on a kind of different approach to that, and it's more about sort of using AI as a mentor. So in the session, I want to sort of do a brief introduction to AI and chatbots, and then look at AI mentoring for professional development, and how we can use AI to mentor us and help us develop our teaching knowledge and our teaching skills. So using it in a more collaborative way. And I'll show you 4 examples of that, and we can look at some of the advantages of, or what I feel are the advantages of collaborating with AI, and we'll look at how to design some of the prompts. So probably you'll notice from the prompts that I show you that there's a specific structure that I use, and once you understand that structure, you can adapt it and get AI to interact with you in different ways. So we'll have a look at that, and we'll have a look at how you can keep up to date with what's changing, and some key takeaways. So that's kind of the session structure. Okay, in terms of AI chatbots, my first experience with an AI chatbot was quite a long time ago, actually. I mean, often we think this is something new that emerged in 2022, and generative AI is something quite new. There was a huge leap then in terms of AI's abilities, but AI has been around for quite a long time. It was the term was actually coined in the 50s, I think, or late 40s and 50s, and the first AI chatbot was actually developed in the 60s. It was a chatbot called Elvira, and Elvira was designed as a method of helping people get analysis, psychoanalysis, and counselling. So people could go along and chat with it and tell it about their problems, and it would go, "Oh yeah, I see, yeah," and be empathetic with them. It was a long time ago on a very old green screen, but most people were very impressed with how effective it was. But then there was a long sort of space before there was any more really significant development. My first interaction with AI was actually in about, I think it was about 2001, 2002, and I was working as a teacher in Morocco then, and I had a group of teenage students who had quite a good level of English. They were quite early teenage students, around 13, 14. They had a good level of English, but they didn't like to speak to each other in English. So getting them to do any kind of fluency development was really difficult. And you know, they really didn't see the point. And I'm sure lots of you identify with that if you've got teenage students, how difficult they can be in that way. So I started looking around for ways that they could sort of practice their English, because they were kind of very fluent. And the first thing I looked at was actually, I went to a chat room to investigate a chat room to see whether that would be suitable. I mean, this is over 20 years ago, so you have to forgive me for my naivety in that way. But I went to the chat room and thought, oh yeah, maybe my students could come here, meet some other people to chat with in English. And when I got there, I soon discovered that that was very unsuitable for them. And, you know, apart from the dangers and the risks involved, what I found was that I wasn't really even having any good conversations. You know, most of the people were saying things like, "Hey, what's up, dude?" And, you know, "Are you male or female?" And, you know, "Where are you?" And that was about it. You know, there wasn't any depth to the conversation. So I didn't really see that my students would benefit from that. I was lucky because at the time there was a film that had just been released, but called AI. I don't know if you've seen it, Artificial Intelligence. It was developed by, it was produced by Spielberg, and the original screenplay was by Stanley Kubrick. and he developed the film around the original story of Pinocchio. And as you probably know, in the original story of Pinocchio, Pinocchio is an artificial boy who wants to be real, but he kind of comes to life, but he's a puppet. And it was kind of based around this story. And in the film, you know, the boy desperately wants to be loved, and it kind of deals with these kind of issues about AI and robots and whether they're becoming human or are they as human as we are. It's a very interesting film. If you ever get the chance to see it, do. But for me, the good thing about it was that they had a website that was promoting it. And on the website, there was a little chatbot in just a single field, that chatbot, where you could go and chat with the character from the film. And so I tried this out and started asking questions. And I found that, you know, it was really good at answering questions. And so I gave my students, took them to the computer room, because nobody had mobile phones in those days. So we all went to the computer room for our tech lessons, and put them on the computers, gave them the link, and got them chatting with the AI chatbot on this website. And it was really interesting. You know, they really got engaged with it and really enjoyed interacting with it. And some of the reasons were that, you know, it would answer any questions they asked, and they were sort of asking it very interesting and quite philosophical things, asking it about, you know, love. Are you capable of love? You know, what does it feel like to be in love? And things that, you know, teenagers, you know, would never ask each other in a classroom, and would never ask me. So, you know, I found it was really impressive, you know, and it didn't get bored with their questions. It would continue answering them. It would, you know, unlike teachers who get a bit impatient sometimes, and it wasn't self-conscious, you know, anything they asked it would answer honestly. And that was great, and until they realized that it had like this kind of short attention span. So you could ask it a question and it would react. It was what at the time what was called reactive AI. It would react, but you can ask a follow-up question. So if you went to ask a follow-up question, it had forgotten what you'd asked it last time. So it didn't understand. So it's like having a conversation with a goldfish, you know. It's like, you know, where do you live? I live in, you know, I live in Torquay. What's Torquay like? I don't know. Who lives in Torquay? I don't know. But so they kind of got they realized that it wasn't really a real person. But, you know, I saw that it had this kind of huge potential, and kept sort of looking around for things. And when generative AI came along and OpenAI released it, ChatGPT, I was amazed that it had this ability to follow these long conversational threads, you know. At the time, I think it's probably expanded now, but it could follow a conversational thread of up to 4,000 words, you know, and my wife tells me this is far more than I'm capable of. You know, I can't follow conversational threads from that long ago. She can follow a conversational thread from 10 years ago and to still remember exactly what I said, and, you know, where we were and what we were wearing at the time and stuff like that. But not me. It can also instigate response, so it can ask you questions as well, and it can be programmed and used to power other apps. So I think those are some huge leaps, you know, and things that we can take advantage of. And that's, you know, what some of those more developed aspects of what I've been working on to develop the AI kind of mentoring approach. And I'll show you some examples of what I mean. The first one is a way of kind of programming ChatGPT or any AI chatbot to act as a sort kind of Socratic mentor, and it uses a Socratic approach. If you're not sure what a Socratic approach is, there's a description here, which AI kindly generated for me, ChatGPT generated for me. And really what it's about is a method that works on asking questions. So if you want to develop somebody's knowledge, you don't just tell them stuff, you ask them questions, and you question their answers, and you keep interrogating them, and you expand their knowledge in that way by getting them to think about things rather than telling them things. And I find this is a very interesting way of developing knowledge, and it's something that I use myself quite a lot. I'd really like to be able to do it better with students as well, but I have to work on that as well. Anyway, there's a prompt here which can enable you to sort of program your AI to act as a Socratic mentor to help you develop your understanding. And I'll copy this prompt now and I'll demonstrate how it works. If I can just go to ChatGPT, if it's going to cooperate with me, and I'll put the prompt in there, paste it in, and then I will press enter. Okay, so I'm going to enter it there. Okay, and it should ask me what area of knowledge I want to work on. Great. Okay, all right, let's start. What topic of knowledge would you like us to explore? So if, for example, I say I was working for a while on inclusion and developing my knowledge of inclusion for education. So if I put in and press enter, let's see what it says. And it should start to ask me questions about that. Okay, so let's begin with a broad question. I'll make my screen a bit bigger so you can possibly read this. Let's see if I can do that. That's a bit bigger. So when you think about inclusion in education, what do you believe it means in practice, not just as a policy term? Okay, so what does it mean? For me, it means ensuring every student can participate in the lesson in an equitable manner. Let's see what it says to that. Okay, that's a clear starting point. I knew it was going to come back with this one. So what do you think might be the difference between equity and equality in this context? Always a tricky one to answer without a visual, but I'll have a go. So equity means that everyone has the means to achieve an equitable goal. So the same goal, I probably should have said. Okay, so equity is about giving each learner what they need to succeed rather than giving everyone the same thing. So it's kind of summarizing what I'm saying and improving it really. So I'm thinking, oh yeah, that's what I should have said. If that's the case, what kind of barriers, visible or invisible, might prevent some students from fully participating in the lesson? They might have different, that should be an N, neurodivergences. In fact, we all do, but then, so, okay. Right, neurodivergence can certainly affect how students engage in the process of information. If we focus on neurodivergence for a minute, what do you think a teacher might need to change or adapt? Okay, I'll stop at that point because you can see what's happening here. I'm interacting with it. It's asking me questions. It's helping to summarize my understanding of it, and it continues to help me dig deeper into this. And, and for me, that's a great way of developing knowledge. I find it much easier to work in this way than to sit down and read an article about neurodivergence or inclusion. And it's really sort of working on developing my knowledge. If, for example, I get stuck and I don't know the answer, I can then ask it for help. So I can just say, I don't know. Can you help me? And it should make some suggestions. Okay. Let's see what it has to say. let's think together rather than just me giving you a list. Oh, it's still pushing me to think a bit harder. If the student processes information more slowly than others, what could you do during the lesson to make sure they still have an opportunity to practice? Okay, so, you know, as you can see, it's not just giving it to me, you know, it's sort of really pushing me to think. And okay, this is an example using inclusion in education and how we can, you know, it's just one topic, but you can use this prompt to develop your knowledge of any topic. It doesn't have to be inclusion. The chat, the interaction will sit in my history, so I don't have to finish it now. I can keep coming back and interacting with it as many times as I like. So I can sort of keep this conversation up over months or even years if I want to, and it will keep helping me to develop my knowledge. So that's sort of one example of a prompt, and that's how I can program it to become a Socratic mentor. And, you know, as a sort of developing teacher, it could be a conversation or an interaction that you have about teaching grammar. It could be about teaching vocabulary, getting ideas for teaching vocabulary or something like that. But it's something teachers can use on their own to develop their own understanding and knowledge. And I think that's quite important. The next example prompt I'll show you is one for helping guide teachers on the process of reflection. You know, reflection is something that we know is incredibly important to teachers and to learners. It's something we always tell our learners to do, to sort of reflect on their learning and try and understand it better. And it's something that, you know, as a teacher trainer, I always encourage teachers to do. Just out of curiosity, how many of you think, for example, keeping a reflective journal is a good idea? You can type in a yes or a no. Keeping a reflective journal is a good idea to encourage learning. Yeah, generally most teachers will say yes. Yeah, everybody thinks it's a great idea. I think it's a great idea. Everybody thinks it's a great idea. How many of you actually do it? You know, and do it after each lesson? And you know, some people are really, that's really great. Somebody's holding theirs up. You know, I think, you know, if you do it, it's really great. And I think it's a great idea. I always recommend people to do it, and then I forget to do it myself. And, you know, part of the reason I've started doing it lots of times, and I've started doing it on paper, and I've kind of got this pile of papers that I never look back at then. And then I think, oh, well, you know, nobody's going to read it anyway. You know, why am I doing this? You know, I think there is still value in the process of doing it, even if you don't look back on it afterwards. But, you know, so again, I've developed a prompt so that you can make this an interactive process, and you can interact with the AI to have guided reflection. And you can base this on lots of different cycles. I mean, I've chosen Gibbs reflective cycle, you know, and I find Gibbs reflective cycle is something really effective, because if something's happened in your classroom, it gets you to walk through these 6 stages of thinking through what's happened, and at the end of it helps you put together an action plan. And for me, that was kind of what was lacking from the journaling process. You know, okay, I'd reflect, but, you know, at the end of it, I wasn't sure what that was doing for me. Whereas Gibbs cycle, especially if you use it with the AI, will take you through this process of reflection, and at the end of it, it will help you create an action plan, which will help you deal with whatever issues are coming up in your classroom. So if I show you that, there's the prompt. And you don't have to use Gibbs cycle of reflection. You can put in your own framework. If you copy and paste the prompt, if there's a different framework that you already use and like, you can use that instead. And so here's my prompt. It says, act as a teacher mentor, help me reflect using the framework, guide me through the process, and at the end, help me produce a summary. So if I just go to, we'll start a new chat. Come on. Okay, I'll paste my prompt in. Prompt. There it is. And I'll choose my framework, which is Gibbs cycle of reflection. Okay. And then when I press enter, it should start that process. Okay. It's taking a little while to think about it. Okay. All right, let's work through Gibbs' reflective cycle step by step. I'll guide you with one question at a time. We'll only move forward when you've answered each one. So we'll start with this stage, description. So ask me questions. Can you describe the specific teaching event or situation you want to reflect on? Include enough detail so that we understand what happened, but try to keep it factual without judging or analysing it. So it wants a factual description of what happened. So if I invent something, I could say something like, I was giving a webinar on AI and I didn't feel like anyone was listening. Okay, of course, that's not how I feel. I know you're all listening very carefully. So if I put that in, that's my description. Okay, got it. That's a clear starting point. So stage 2, feelings. At the time of the webinar, what were you thinking and feeling, both before it started and as it was happening? So I could put something there like, I was really nervous. Okay. Thanks for sharing. Evaluation stage. Looking back, what do you think went well during the work? Okay, so as you can see, it's walking me through the process. It's giving me a little bit of feedback. Sometimes it can demand more description as well. And you know, at the end of that, it should give me an action plan for how I can make my webinars more interactive and how I can feel better about what's happening in them. Make sure people are listening. So again, that for me, that I feel that's like a really kind of productive way of journaling and reflecting, because at the end of it, I can take action. And it's not me sitting on my own. You know, I might, if I'm sitting on my own doing the reflection process, when I get to the action plan stage, I might think, well, you know, I just don't know what to do. I don't know how to improve it. But by working through it with the AI, it will give you suggestions and it will support you, and it will kind of draw on information and help you. So for me, that makes the journaling and reflective process that much more productive, you know, and I think for me that I can see a clear outcome from that. And I think that helps a lot of teachers, maybe students as well, you know, knowing that this reflective process isn't something kind of that I'm just doing for myself and no one will ever see. It has a result and it has an output and things like that. There's a comment about different accounts responding in different ways. And I think that, you know, that's a fair comment. You know, whenever you go to an AI and you put a prompt in, if it's a different AI, it can respond in a different way. But it's also true for me, you know, if I put the same prompt in the same AI, you know, 2 different times, it will respond differently each time. And I think that's, you know, that's just something we live with. It's a bit like people. You know, they respond differently each time. You won't get the same answers from people every time. But I still think that kind of makes it still makes it kind of a valuable process. And in a way, it kind of makes it that much more natural and responsive as well. You know, it in a way, it kind of proves that it's a personalized process because you're not getting the same thing every time, you know, and a lot of it depends on what you put in when it asks you questions and how much detail you put in and things like that. So it's kind of that aspect of it is, I think, quite interesting as well. Okay, so that's my second example is really that's my second example of guided reflection. Another one, again, another one of these things that I think is a really, really useful thing to do as teachers is to do action research or classroom research. You know, I think it's I don't know how many researchers there are here, but I think teachers doing action research and classroom research is actually much better than reading somebody else's research that they've done with their class. Okay, we all know that research. It's nice to get research published and things like that, but that you can't be doing your own research with your students, finding out what really works with them. But I think it's something we constantly recommend, but something that as sort of novice teachers or new teachers can be very difficult to do. So again, I've put together a prompt that will kind of walk someone through that process and help them come up with their own action research project. And so basically all you need to do when you get this is copy this, and at the end it will produce a project plan for you. I'll start a new chat again. Okay, paste it in. See if it's going in. Okay, and then it should start. Okay. Okay, let's build this together step by step. First question, which single concrete teaching or learning problem you most want to improve through action research? And it gives some suggestions. So let's say I want to use AI more productively and discourage student cheating. Maybe that could be my problem. I'm sure that's a problem nobody has at the moment. Okay, so let's see what it does. Got it. You want to explore productive AI use while also reducing AI-related cheating. Next question, for your action research, which specific group of students do you want to focus on? Okay, so it's asking for level and class size. So it's really digging for more information so it can make this specific to my students. Okay, so I have level B2 students of English. They are 16 to 18 years old, and they are, well, let's say Egypt. And they are from Egypt. Let's see what that happens. Okay, perfect. Next question is, in what context or type of work do you notice the AI-related cheating happening most? For example, is it in writing assignments, homework presentations? It's probably going to be writing assignments, isn't it? So let's see, writing assignments. Understood. The issue is mainly with writing assignments. Next question, what do you currently do to encourage students to use AI productively in writing, if anything? And what do you currently do to detect or prevent AI cheating? Interesting one, isn't it? I tell them they'll fail their exams. It's a terrible thing to say, but I'll try it anyway. So right now your approach is mainly verbal warnings about risks and consequences of misuse. Next question, what kind of positive, productive AI use could you think of? Okay, so you see here, it's getting me to walk through and think about the questions and think about the issues, and it's gathering the information that it needs. And at the end of this, I'm not going to go to the end, because you can try it yourself and with your own students. At the end of this, it will come up with an action plan for me, and together we'll come up with an action plan that has suggestions and things that I can do to do action research to find out more about, why this is happening and what we can do with it. And I think that's, even for someone who's quite a novice teacher, that opens up action research and makes it available to them and can help them, guide them through that process and help them to do it. And I think that's something that could be really useful. Okay, so I think I've got one more example of how we can use it. So that's action research. Okay, so my final one is something that I used to have to do. I don't know if any of you have to do this, but are you ever asked to use smart plans? I mean, smart plans are great. Again, this is an example of, this is what a smart plan is. So a smart plan is something that you put together to plan how you'll develop, in our case, you'll develop your teaching. And so your smart plan, SMART is an acronym for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. And it's a framework for developing goals that are achievable. So and I worked for the British Council for a long time, and they were really keen on every teacher having a SMART plan, so that you'd plan how you would develop your teaching. And smart ones are very good because they framework your planning so that you don't just sort of come up with like, oh, I want to develop my teaching. They ask you to be much more specific. So it's, how are you going to develop your teaching? How much are you going to do? How is what you're thinking about really achievable? How are you going to know you've achieved it? Is it relevant, and by when are you going to achieve it? So these smart plans are really great things. I hated writing mine, but I know that they're really good. I'm probably a terrible student as well for some things, but yeah, I always found them difficult to write. But now I've sort of developed a prompt, so you can get the AI to help you write the smart plan, and it just sort of takes you through the stages. So at the end of it, you have something that is specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. And again, you can just copy the prompt, and it will walk you through the process. So that's another kind of really useful process that I think we can get AI to do with us. Let's see if I can get that. I won't go through the whole process with you. I'll just prove to you that it works. So you just copy paste it in, press enter. Okay, let's start with the S of smart. Sometimes when we were talking earlier about the variations, that it doesn't always respond in the same way. And sometimes when you use it, it will explain to you what smart is first, but it hasn't in this case. So what specific aspect of your teaching would you like to develop or improve? It could be something related to lesson planning, classroom management, student engagement. Okay, so I'd like to improve my use of AI chatbots with students. So I'll put that in as my specific aim. Great. That's a clear starting point. Let's make it more specific, because as I said, that is a very vague kind of thing. So it is pushing me to sort of improve my plan. When you say improve your use of AI chatbots, what exactly do you mean? For example, and this is really the really helpful bit, is giving me examples to help focus my thinking, because a lot of people just think, well, I don't really know, I just want to improve it. Do you want to use them to design more engaging activities? Do you want integrate them into lessons more effectively, help students use them for independent learning? So it makes me think about something more specific. So I'll go for this one. This is how I want to use them. This is part of my goal. And then, okay, perfect. Now we've got a sharper focus, helping students use AI chatbots for more independent learning. The next step in SMART is M for measurable. We need to know a way whether you've achieved your goal. So it's explaining me what SMART goals are all about as I go through, and it's giving me suggestions for how I could make it measurable. Number of students who use chatbots regularly outside the classroom, quality of work they produce, feedback from students about their confidence skills. So these are some of the ways that I could measure that. So again, I find this a much more productive way of writing these SMART goals than if I sat down and did it on my own, because it's helping me and it's giving me ideas and helping to develop my thinking. I've again, as a manager, when I've managed people who are writing their own SMART goals, a lot of them just can't do it. They just don't understand it and they can't really get their head around it and how to make it measurable and achievable. And this really guides through the process and can help them do it. So I want a specific improvement in their language ability or study habits. That's what I'm looking for. And then it will take me to the next step or ask me to refine that. Okay, so achievable. This is where we check if your goal is realistic given your teaching context and resources. Think about your students, their tech access, and your lesson schedule. What would be a realistic time frame for seeing a measured improvement? And again, this is something that's really productive. I think it's really making you think about, whether those things are achievable. But again, as I said, it will walk me through this whole process, and at the end, it will come up with my kind of my own unique action plan for doing that, which I think is, really productive and helpful. Again, especially for teachers who are still developing, who might not be so confident with this. So those are my 4 examples. I've looked at SMART plans. We've looked at action research. We've looked at guided reflection and journaling, and we've looked at the Socratic approach. So the sort of 4 different ways that we can use AI as a guide and a mentor. I hope that what you've seen from this is you using it collaboratively in this way. It makes those processes much more engaging. It's not like sitting down and trying to do them on your own. You do feel, I feel, at least when I'm working with AI in that way, I'm interacting with another kind of person or with another mind. It helps me develop the thought processes and frameworks and understand them better. I think especially for sort of less more novice teachers, it can help you understand those frameworks when maybe you didn't before. It's making me think about my own prompting. So there's sort of an element of metacognition there as well. Developing metacognition. It's helping me develop my teaching. And one of the other things I think it does is it's slowing down learning, and that I think maybe that's one of the problems with AI at the moment, is that you can go to it, ask it for something, you get it immediately, and maybe you only half read it or don't read it, or you just share it, and the whole learning process is becoming too quick. Learning is a slow process. To get things into your mind and sort of really assimilate them and gather a deep understanding of them is a slower process. And I think by interacting with AI in this way, we slow that process down and make it much more productive, and there's much more learning there. I think using it in this way can also help you overcome isolation. Lots of teachers work on their own and don't have anyone to, especially teachers working online, don't have anyone to throw ideas around with. Maybe if you're not in a staff room, or you don't have supportive colleagues in a staff room, or whether your teacher development or your teacher mentor is someone who's more about assessing you rather than, improving you, then you can feel very isolated. And I think, that can become, having that someone just to bounce ideas off is really useful. I mean, that's my context as well. I find it really useful not to be, not to just have to think through things through on my own. And again, there's that affective effective, so it can make you more affective and more effective, I think. And I think that's really important. Okay, in terms of structure, if you want to try this prompting structure and write your own collaborative prompts, what I do is I'll make that a bit bigger. I always start with act as, so whatever you want it to be, whatever advice you want it to take, ask it to act as that. So act as a teacher mentor, act as an expert script writer. And by starting with that prompt act as, you limit the information field that the large language model searches through. It doesn't search through everything to do with, physics or astronomy or astrology. You're limiting the field. And then you tell it what process you want to guide it through. So you tell it to guide me through the process, tell it to do it by guide me by asking questions, and tell it how you want it to do it. Another important one is to add this point about wait for my answer before asking the next question. What AI likes to do is just give you a big stream of questions that you have, you get 20 questions to answer, and then you're like, God, where do I start? But so tell it to wait for your answers first. And again, that personalizes the whole process more. And you can add the rules at the bottom. So you can add rules about language level, how formal or informal you want it to be. If you're at PhD level and you want PhD level advice, then tell it, I want my advice at PhD level. If you're really low level, then ask it to talk to you like you're 5 years old or something like that, and it will explain very simply. So that's a kind of structure for writing the prompts. In terms of as I said, all these prompts come from my book, which is AI Mediated Autonomous Teacher Development. And in the book, there are lots more different topics. That we look into sort of developing knowledge, thinking about students, reflection, sharing your knowledge, and it can guide you through lots of different processes. And all these prompts have been written for you. So if you don't want to write your own prompts, you can get hold of my book. Otherwise, you can look at the contents page and start thinking about working out how to write those prompts yourself. And it's not that difficult. Once you have the structure, you can write those prompts quite easily. So the next thing I want to do before we finish is keeping up to date. I produce a free educational technology newsletter once a month where I share sort of articles and new apps. So if you're interested in signing up for that, it's free. You can scan the QR code and sign up there. Or you can get the presentation afterwards and just click on it then if you want to. I also have a site called Tools for Teachers and Learners. And on that one, I share different AI tools and things like that. So if you want to, you can follow that one. And again, it's free. You can subscribe and you'll get updates when anything new comes out. I'll put that there. And I also have another one where I share, I'll put the link into chat, where I share articles, and this one's learning and technology news. So whenever I find any useful articles on learning and technology, I share them there. So if you really want to keep up to date and to know what's happening and have a quick way to do that, then by all means, subscribe to those services. They're free and you'll get updated probably far more than you need to be. And that will help you having to trawl through everything available on the internet. I do also run courses on AI, on different aspects of AI. So if you're interested in doing a course and you're not that keen on reading things, then there's a link to my courses and I'll put that into chat. Lots of different courses and to get different ideas and just some things to think about before we finish. I'll go to any questions in a minute, but it's worth you thinking first. What are 3 key learning points you'll take away from this session, and what would you still like to know more about? So that's your reflection task, really. 3 things you'd take away from the session and what you'd like to know more about. And so last thing really is if you want to ask any questions, whether you want to do them through the chat or turn on audio or whichever, I'm happy to do whichever's best. what's best for you guys in terms of management? I can see we've got a hand up already.
Oh, thank you. Hi, Nick.
Hi there.
It's always nice to see you and have you in the session. And also thank you to the Artificial Intelligence Digital Technology Section Interest Group from the TESOL Conference for conducting this great session, hosting our dearest friend in educational technology.
Oh, thank
Nick.
you. It's always good. It's always a pleasure to speak to teachers, and especially
Yeah,
about
right.
AI.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, following up on my previous comment in the chat, well, if you still remember, probably you won't remember, in your previous sessions I attended that I also talk about the iterative prompt or actually chatting with chatbot. Because as we see, we have, well, we still see chatbot users or even teachers using one-shot prompt and that's it.
Yeah.
Moving to a different chat and then using one shot from and that's it. But as we know, it's getting smarter now, where it follows up through conversations and
Yeah,
gets
that's right. Yeah.
more grasp into the context of the conversations in the chat. I would like again to follow up on my previous comment about personalizations, especially using this kind of strategy like prompts. Well, again, as we know, we can personalize our profile. As example, in ChatGPT, we can make them have a memory about us, a custom prompt, and so on and so forth. However, I'm afraid it might also cause or lead or even encourage confirmation bias if we would like to go on with certain prompts, because it would tend to only satisfy, it would respond to satisfy our personalizations in our profile. So, well, that's the first one. So I'm afraid it would again encourage or even lead to confirmation bias because they are trying their best to personalize to, well, satisfy our personalization, right? So the second one, do you think it would be more convenient to make this kind of prompt or strategy into pre-prompted GPTs, as example, or pre-prompted chatbots, so teachers can just use them, and let's say the chatbot could be neutral instead of personalizing to each of different account? That's my two questions, probably.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. I'll deal with the second one first, the one about creating, because I don't know if everybody knows this. I'll just sort of share it just in case. But you can, create your own kind of miniature apps, can't you, using ChatGPT, so that you create an app for a specific purpose, then share it with other teachers or students. And I think that that's a great idea because it can save people all the hassle of having to work out the prompting for themselves. I'm actually quite keen on both, actually. I think as teachers it's great to have that knowledge of prompting so that you understand what's going on underneath the hood, but for students as well, I think that's quite important. But it's also great to have something that will do the job well. So I think both approaches are quite valid, although I think there are probably less teachers who know how to create those personalized apps, sort of using ChatGPT. So that's a skill in itself, and I think it's a very valuable one. In terms of the confirmation bias and personalization, I really don't know for certain. It depends to some extent on how much information you're giving it and how much you're personalizing it and what you're asking for. I think within the spheres of teacher development, it's possible that it could lean towards, for example, if you're predominantly a fan of the PPP approach, then that might be something that it steers you towards because you like it, and I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think in other spheres outside of teaching, for example, politics, for example, it may be more dangerous because there is the area there for it to sort of re-ingrain bad thinking. But I think, I think that's relatively small. It's not something that I put a lot of worry into, but I guess every chatbot is different. But I know that ChatGPT has some quite effective guardrails on, and it's not, you know, like you can ask it to about conspiracy theories, and it will tell you stuff, but it won't tell you they're true, you know, and things like that. I guess there are ways that you can hack that, but this is something that I deal with quite a bit more in my book on critical thinking and AI, actually. But I think it's a really interesting area. But you know, I don't have a definitive answer for you. I mean, one of the ways to make sure it's not ingraining your own biases is to clear delete the chat regularly and stop it storing your information, because then it comes to you fresh every time. Best answer I can give, I'm afraid. I can see a question from Chris Fry, which is better, sharing prompts or preparing a GPT? Sharing prompts may spur learners to adapt the prompts, particularly if you include content variables. Yeah, I think it's probably better to sort of give them the prompts that they can create variations on themselves, because I think, you know, just rather than giving a prompt that's ready-made, because, you know, you're developing the underlying knowledge and strategy of how to use AI more effectively. You know, it's easy to give students a prompt and say, okay, go away and use this, and maybe they will. But if you show them how to adapt it and how the prompt is structured, then you're developing their understanding at a far more deeper and more valuable level, I think. Okay. Has anybody spotted any other questions? Is there anything I've missed? Any other questions? I think if you want the presentation, you can scan the QR code that I'm sharing now. I'll also copy the link into chat. So if you want to get it, and all the prompts are in there, and if you want them, this is the link. I'm just putting through the link to the presentation. Okay, there it is. Oh, somebody else has kindly put it in as well. That saves a bit of stress for me. And so, you know, by all means, go through the presentation again, pull out the prompts, have a go at prompting some yourself, write yourself a smart plan about how to become better at prompting, and you know, check out my books and courses if you want to, and enjoy. You know, but I think one point that didn't come up as a question, but I think was mentioned, that you said earlier about, you know, a lot of teachers just go to ChatGPT and they do the single prompt. And I think that's true, and they do the single prompt, don't get what they want, and think, oh, ChatGPT doesn't work, you know. And it's actually what we call a picnic problem. And picnic is a nice acronym. It means problem in chair, not in computer. You know, if you do a single prompt, you know, and it doesn't give you what you want, you're the problem, not the GPT. You know, you have to think about it and interact with it, and deepen your understanding. You know, it's like someone going to it, and a student going to it and say, hey, write my essay for me, and it produces an essay which is nothing to do with what, you know, it can't read your mind, it doesn't know what your essay needs to be about. Give it information, you know, and work with it, and it will give you better results. Anyway, that's probably a good spot to finish, and we're on time. So thanks very much for listening, and you know, I hope you get the presentation and you find it useful, and thanks for your questions as well. Thanks
so
a lot.
much. Thank you so much, Nick. So I collected all the links, and I shared them with our participants in WhatsApp. Here, they have the QR code. So the live will be available. It's available now and will be available on our YouTube channel. Thank you so much, Nick. It's really amazing. What we went through yesterday, it's like a blend from career coaching, teaching, inclusive learning. So that's really what is really needed nowadays in our educational systems all over the world. Thanks a lot for your time, Nick.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for devoting time to be with us, even though you were on all your holidays. And I'll let you say anything, you know, to wrap up at the end of the webinar. So the links to the courses, anything you want to share with us. Thank you, Nick.
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks for listening, and enjoy the rest of your day. Yeah, and I'll see you again another time, I'm sure. Okay,
Thank
bye-bye.
you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. To our colleagues, please fill in the feedback form. It's from there you're going to automatically get your certificates of attendance for today. So, and have a nice day and see you next time. Goodbye.